A very good morning to you. How are you doing? Welcome to another beautiful day. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. My name is James Okumu, welcoming you to Lifestyle Friday. Karibu Sana. Last week we had begun a conversation. We had a few hitches here and there, but we promised to come back again with this conversation, talking about the last will and testament. Very, very important discussion. I'm sure you've seen stories in the media where the father dies and the children are taking each other to court for years fighting over property. Or you've seen an issue whereby a man dies and out of the woodwork several women come forth and declare this child was fathered by this man. He needs to be included when the inheritance is being given out. We've seen those stories. They're quite common in this part of the world. Why? Because many of us don't consider writing a will. Why do we do that? I wonder. We want to find out today. I have an amazing guest that will be introducing her to you in the next short while. And as always, inviting you to be a part of this conversation. If you have a thought, a question, an experience you would want to share, feel free to do so. The SMS line 20316, WhatsApp number 0786 316 316. So before we get in that discussion, reminding you, Eden Tea truly cares for you and I, reminding us in this season that we ought to continue doing the little things that are making a big difference. What are some of those little things? Washing your hands with soap and water. Very, very important. In fact, if you look around, you will realize just that one habit of washing our hands with soap and water has prevented so many diseases. Very few people are going to hospital nowadays. Why? Because of such a simple thing. Number two, put on a face mask. When you're out there interacting with other people, put on a face mask. Don't ignore that. Also, maintaining interpersonal distance, very, very important. Eden Tea is available at all leading supermarkets at affordable prices. If you haven't tried out Eden Tea in this season, my friend, I'm challenging you over the weekend. Get to the supermarket, grab some Eden Tea. You will enjoy it. It is indeed the finest garden tea. You can never go wrong with Eden Tea. Now, joining me today via Zoom, I have Terry Adwol Ngire, who is an advocate of the High Court, and she is also experienced in family law, tax law, and general litigation. Good to have you back, Terry. How are you doing today?
I'm fine, thank you.
Karibu Sana. We want to get back to the discussion we began last week, but we didn't quite finish it. So we'll begin again from the onset by just describing, when we talk about a will, what is a will?
A will is a written wishes of a deceased person. This is in plain language, someone managing his affairs in his grave.
Mm-hmm. Are there different kind of wills, or it's just one thing?
Legally, we have two types of wills. Mm-hmm. We have a written will and an oral will.
Okay.
However, the law on oral will is very strict, and that is why people are encouraged to do written wills. Because in an oral will, mm-hmm. you have to die within 3 months of making an oral will.
Oh. Okay, so if you made an oral will and you die 6 months later, 1 year later, it's not valid?
No, it's not valid.
What about cases where a family got together and the father talked to the children and everybody, and they wrote down some things, but it was nothing, a lawyer was not in place, it's just the family that sat down and decided, the father appointed and said, this is how things are going to be governed when I'm gone. Is that something that the court would look at and say they would honor that?
There are requirements of a will. If it has adhered to the terms and conditions of a requirement of a will, then it will pass as a written good will, because it has to be attested by at least 2 or more competent witnesses. That is one of the major requirements of a written will. So even if a father just drafts it there and there are 2 or more competent witnesses, by competent I mean someone of age and of sound mind.
Okay.
Yes, and all of them must be present and see the person writing a will signing the will.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm just wondering.
So if, for example, a father says that I bequeath this, and writes it down, and he signs the will once the witnesses have left, then it is not a valid will.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes, the witnesses must be present and see him sign the will.
Okay. I'm just wondering,
Yes.
in your work, do you get a lot of cases where families are battling out in court because a will had not been written?
A lot.
Why is this the case? Why is it that we don't want to write wills?
Maybe because in African tradition, people think that if you write a will, maybe you're contemplating your death.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe people are just ignorant about the advantages of writing a will. But it also narrows down to our beliefs. We believe that if we write a will, maybe I want to die, which is not true.
Yes. You said advantages. You talked about advantages of writing a will. What are some of those advantages, if you could mention a few to us today?
One of the major advantages of writing a will is that you are now able to manage your affairs even in your grave.
Mm-hmm.
You are also able to cater for other people other than your immediate family members. Assuming you had a mpango wa kando somewhere who gave birth to a child.
Yeah.
If you write a will, you can bequeath that child or that mpango wa kando a property.
Mm-hmm.
And it will be validly so. But when you die without writing a will, the law provides that it is your immediate family members that should succeed you.
Okay.
Yes.
But even those immediate family members, saa zingine hawasikizani.
Yeah, in most cases, hawasikizani, especially in polygamous homes.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, then it has to be distributed equally. But it could be disadvantageous or advantageous, depending now with, assuming one house has 3 kids, another house has 1 kid.
Yeah.
If you don't agree amongst yourself, then the estate will be divided equally. Assuming there were 6 properties, then it is 3-3,
Mm-hmm.
irrespective of how many children you have.
Wow. On the whole issue of the Mpango wa Kando saga, because we see a lot of this happening, where the man has died and then suddenly 2 or 3 women show up with watoto wakubwa wanasema, this man is the father to these children. What happens in a case like that if the will had not been written? Does the court honor that?
If a will had not been written, the law provides that children,
Uh-huh.
if you can prove that they were children of the deceased, then they're entitled to benefit.
Okay.
Assuming that this man was married under African tradition, under African Act,
Yeah.
Under African Marriage Act, he did a wedding,
Mm-hmm.
or he went to the Attorney General. These are marriages that are considered monogamous.
Yeah.
If you come as a polygamous, if you come as a mpango wa kando, you cannot benefit as the woman, but the child out of that union can benefit legally.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to prove it. Yes.
Oh, you have to prove this is their child, eh?
Yes.
I'm just wondering.
You also have to prove that he was dependent on this person before he died.
Oh, how do you prove that?
Maybe he was supporting the other mpango wa kando.
So if they were not dependent on you, they don't qualify?
In most cases, it is arguable because you have to prove that you are dependent, especially under Section 29 of the Law of Succession Act.
Uh-huh.
And this also applies in rebellious children. Sometimes you find that a parent has written a will and has left out their children.
Yeah.
1 or 2 of their children, maybe because they feel they were rebellious and he didn't want to leave them anything.
Uh-huh.
These children will move to court under Section 26 of the Law of Succession Act to be made a provision for. However, they have to prove that they were dependent on their father.
Whenever I hear that word, however, I just know things are about to go in a different direction. On the whole aspect of writing a will, I'm just thinking, okay, so it's me and my wife. So who writes this will? Is it advisable for us to come together and write the will, or does the man write the will? How does it work out?
A will is written independently. You write your own will, your wife writes her own will.
Oh, so there's nothing like a joint will?
You cannot write a collective will.
Okay.
Yeah, you write your own will, she writes her own will. However, she can be a witness to your will and you can be a witness to her will.
At what point would you advise somebody to begin consider to consider to write a will? Because the tendency is, even as we shared earlier, a lot of us African men, we want to wait until the last minute, and our life inakwisha kabla last minute yetu ifike, and so we end up writing nothing. So at what point do you advise one to start thinking and making plans to write a will?
Anytime you acquire a property, you should think about writing a will.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you should think about bequeathing it either to anyone you want, anytime you acquire a property.
So even me with my Volkswagen, I should start thinking about writing a will?
Yes, you should. I mean, bequeath it to whoever you want.
You see, that's the other thing I think that a lot of us think about, and we think, I don't have much, because the misconception that many of us have believed is it is the people who have wealth that need to write a will. So me, I'm thinking, sasa mimi na Volkswagen kangu, if I happen to pass on, sasa is this even something people will fight over? And so it seems like it's not necessary. I don't know what your thoughts are concerning that kind of an attitude.
It is necessary, especially to protect your family members, your wife, your children, because you see in the African tradition, we see cases where after you die, maybe your brothers, your uncles, your parents, they chase away the wife, the children, you get.
Yeah.
So in that case, if you have written a will and bequeath them anything you have, they'll have a right over them.
Ooh, I like that. So it's about thinking about those you will leave behind and protecting them once you are gone.
Yes.
I think when it's sold that way, then it makes more sense.
Yes.
If you look at it from the other perspective, it's almost like, mnataka nikufe ndio mchukue mali yangu. And I think a lot of us men would struggle with that. But when you bring it from this other perspective of you're protecting your people so that when you pass on, no one will harass them, that sounds better.
Yeah, that is the essence of a will, to protect your dependents whom you've left behind.
Let's go back to the whole aspect of what makes a will legal. Because you may be thinking you have something, and then once you die, it's contested and it's null and void. What are some key issues that would make a will null and void?
First, you have to be of sound mind and of good and of age when you're writing a will.
Mm-hmm.
And sound mind is something that has been contested over the years.
Okay.
Some people think because you're old and you are sick, you cannot write a will. There are some people who get extremely sick. So long as it has not affected your mind and it has not affected your collection of your asset and collection of the family members, you can write a will even on your deathbed. So long as you can collect the family members, you have a good collection of your assets, you know that I'm disposing this to so and so.
Okay.
So sound mind and of age. A minor cannot write a will. Secondly, a will has to be signed by the person who's writing a will. And by signing, it is encouraged that they sign each and every page.
Sio pale mwisho peke yake?
It is advisable that they sign each and every page, of course, to avoid issues of someone blacking out a page or so and so.
Okay.
It also has to be attested by 2 or more competent witnesses. By attesting is they have to countersign what the person who was writing the will has signed. They have to be present and see the person signing the will.
Okay.
Although the 2 or more witnesses, they don't have to be there, all of them at the same time, attesting to the signature of the person writing the will, but they must see the person signing the will.
Okay.
Yeah, the person must also have a collection of all his assets and all his beneficiaries, and he must know that I'm bequeathing this to so and so and this to so and so. A will can be contested if some properties have been left out.
Okay.
And someone can argue maybe this person was not of a proper state of mind when he was leaving this property out. If he knew he was his, why was he leaving it out?
Okay.
Yes.
That's a that's a very interesting thought there, because one of the things I've also recognized that happens a lot is you have a lot of men who have property that they have not disclosed to their family.
Yes.
You know, and so it becomes an issue because you don't even know what was there. Sometimes you don't want to tell them that I have this and I have this and I have this. I don't know where that fear comes from. And so by the time you're dying, your family has no idea really what you had. How does that work out?
We encourage men to disclose to their women all their properties.
Yes.
And if they cannot disclose, they should write it in a will. Because, you know, another thing about writing a will is that you have to appoint your own executor. By executor, I mean someone who will actualize the wishes in the will.
Yes.
So by appointing an executor, you are able to control your affairs. And this executor must also not be a sole beneficiary. I mean, he must not really benefit out of it.
Okay.
Because if he benefits out of it, then there are issues of suspicious circumstances.
Yeah.
People might argue, maybe, you know, you compel this person to write a will and appoint you as an executor. Though an executor can benefit, but it is advisable that they should not immensely benefit.
Okay.
So if you don't want to disclose your properties to your family members, just write a will and give it there. When you die, everyone will be shocked, but you'll have bequeathed it to anyone you want.
Okay. This morning we are talking...
Because if you don't disclose it, then you leave it in a limbo there. People don't know about it, and at some point, maybe it will revert back to the government.
Oh, yeah. In fact, that's the other question I wanted to ask you. What happens to property and even money in a bank, or even things like shares, where somebody died, they never disclose to anyone that they have all these things, the family has no idea, so the family never comes to claim them? Iyo mali inaendaga wapi?
If there was the next of kin, then the responsible authority will try as much as possible to reach to the next of kin.
Yeah.
However, if the next of kin was not disclosed, then it is unfortunate it will revert back to the government.
Oh, does that happen a lot?
Yes. It happens. It happens. I have about 2 cases where the money is reverted back to the government. It was in a pension scheme.
Yes.
Yeah, my client thought that maybe the husband was a beneficiary, but he didn't know anything. She didn't know anything. She didn't know the pension number. She didn't have an idea.
Oh, my goodness.
So us trying to follow up, you know, you cannot just walk into a government office and say a name. You must have like that pension number. So it reverted back. Yes.
Wow, that's sad. You leave your family suffering, and your money goes to the government. Oh, my goodness.
Yes.
You are watching and listening to Lifestyle Friday, and today we are talking about the last will and testament. Reure, where umeandika will? Or you're thinking like me, niko tu na ka Volkswagen. That one is not a big deal. Well, we are being told today you need to start thinking about writing a will. And I love what our guest has told us today. Look at it from the perspective of protecting those you leave behind. I've had cases where a friend of mine narrated to me how when her father died, she was young. They took her out of the baby cot. They put her on the ground. They went with every piece of furniture in the house. And I'm thinking, who wants that to happen to their family once they are gone? Well, if you have questions for us today, 20316 is the SMS line. WhatsApp number is 0786 316 316. It is Lifestyle Friday. Today we are talking about the last will and testament. In studio with us via Zoom, Terry Aduol Ngire, who is an advocate of the High Court. Umeandika will ama unangojea. Terry, I have a question for you as we continue with this discussion today. What about a case whereby a spouse dies? Let's say the woman dies. You know, you were husband and wife, you had children, the woman dies, the man remarries. Yeah? How can this wife, the dead wife, before she dies, is there a way she can protect her property to only go to her children and not to go to the other children that may come up if the husband remarries? Is that something that... okay. Signal gone. Terry, your video is off. Let's see if we can sort this out.
I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay, there you are. You're back.
Yes.
You had disappeared a bit. And I was getting a bit worried.
Also, yes.
Okay, there we go. Great. Okay, so the question is this. Husband and wife, husband and wife, they have children, wife dies, and they had property together. How can this wife secure her property so that her children become the beneficiaries and not the other children that may come up if the husband happens to remarry? Is that even something to think about?
Yes, if he didn't write a will, then they will just go through the intestate normal succession as provided under the Act. That is, she will go to the chief. The chief will write her area chief will write her a letter showing that she is the wife of the deceased, now her husband, and highlighting all her children and all the assets. For the chief to know all these assets, if they are land, then you have to bring the copy of the sachet. Then if it is shares in any organization, then you will have to bring something from there to show that those shares belong to him.
Okay.
And then with that, you'll process the death certificate. And then with the death certificate and the letter of the chief, you will now go through the normal succession process, that is by filling the relevant forms that is required. The forms are provided for in the Succession Act. You will need 2 guarantors who will guarantee that the information that you're providing is the truth.
Okay.
And in any event you have not given the true information, then they are held responsible. They will bring the copy of their IDs and all dependents also the copies of their IDs. And note that if there is a minor involved, then you will hold those property in trust for the minors. You will not be allowed to sell, even if the grant is confirmed. The process starts that after you make the forms, you lodge them. After you lodge them, you then go and pay to the government. You go and pay at a national bank to the government gazette.
Yes.
After paying and you have the gazette notice, you go back to court. After you go back to court, and then you lodge the documents and they're taken to the government printers. And once the gazette notice is out, you wait for limited grant. And once the limited grant is out, then you have to wait for 6 months.
Wow.
That is statutory time provided under the Act.
Okay.
After, then you can come with all your beneficiaries and apply for the grant to be confirmed, if no objection is brought by anybody.
Okay, great. Terry, I have another question for you. What happens in a case where you have joint property? Sometimes as husband and wife, maybe you bought a house, it's joint property, or maybe sometimes even with friends. Nowadays we have a lot of investment chamas, so maybe you got together with 2 other friends, you invested, you have bought apartments or you've bought land. What happens to such property in the case of death?
There are 2 categories of joint ownership. If it is ownership in common, if you die, then it automatically devolves to the other live person. Then there is this tenancy in common where maybe you jointly co-own, but you have half share or a particular share in it. There are some cases, especially in land, you realize that you are jointly owned, yes, but it is half share. If it is half share, you will succeed the estate of the other half share. However, if it is joint in common, once he dies, it automatically devolves to the other person. And this one especially applies in spouses.
Okay.
Yes.
So would you say that's another way to safeguard your family when you have property? Isikuwe tu yako peke yako, you have property together with your wife, so that when you die or she dies, it passes off to the one remaining.
Yeah, spouses should be encouraged to jointly co-own properties, because once you die, it devolves to the other party.
Okay. So in the other case then, if if it's 50-50, you have to be specific about where that 50% will go once you die.
You know, if it is called tenancy in common.
Yeah.
It is maybe some percentage to the other person, some percentage to this person. If it is indicated in terms of percentage or in terms of shares, if someone dies, then you have to succeed the estate of the other person who has died before you can enjoy your side.
Okay. Apart from a scenario like that, are there other avenues and other ways where you can actually safeguard some of your property, whether there's a will or not? You know, I'm thinking of cases where maybe something like an insurance policy, a life policy, and you have a beneficiary. Are those applicable, or must you write also a will regarding something like that?
The best way is that in your properties, if it is in terms of spouse, put your spouse as the next of kin. If you don't have a spouse, you have children, put them as the next of kin if they are adults.
Okay.
That way it is easier.
I was hearing a story of somebody who took a life insurance policy, and he had taken it when he was still single, and he wrote the mom as the next of kin. So he eventually got married, had children, built a very good business. Akaendelea tu na maisha. And then eventually he died. And I think this policy was worth about 10 million bob. And it became a fight between the wife and the mother because he never bothered to change the next of kin to be his wife. Aliacha tu vile aliandika kabla aoe. So I'm saying that to ask about updating some of these things. Is it possible? Is it necessary? How often should I think of updating? Because even with a will, I continue acquiring property, isn't it? Maybe I wrote a will last year. This year nimeongeza kaploti. This year something else has come. So can I update? How often and how necessary is it?
To answer your first question, it is important that if you acquire properties before you're married, once you are married, if you don't have a marriage certificate, swear an affidavit. To that effect that you're now married and you want, maybe if it is a policy, to be changed to capture your wife and eventually your children. However, if you have a marriage certificate, you just take the marriage certificate and they update it. Because now, if you leave your mother as the next of kin, it puts your wife in a tricky situation that she has to prove that she was a beneficiary to that policy.
Yes.
Which is now hard. Yes. And on your next question that you said about amending a will, yes, a will can be amended. In most cases, it is amended by something called a codicil.
Okay.
However, it is not advisable to keep on amending with a codicil all the time, maybe once or twice. And the third time, you just write a new will.
Okay. What happens in a case whereby... Well, a case whereby you have a situation where both parents die, and now it's just the children and there was no will. What's the process of, sharing out the property or coming to an agreement? What do they have to do in a situation like that?
The normal succession process that I had explained earlier. You know, under the law of succession, there is hierarchy on who can succeed.
Oh.
If the husband is dead, it is now the wife. If the wife is dead, the children. So if all of them have died, then it is the children to go to the chief, appoint an administrator, indicate all the assets of their parents.
What about when the kids cannot come to an agreement? Because I've seen this happen several times. The children, hawasikizani what goes, who takes what and who remains with what. What happens in a situation like that?
If they don't agree and one of them moves to court either way, then the estate will have to be distributed equally. Whether you are a woman, whether you are a girl, a woman and you're married. Like, for example, if I get married, and I go there and my father dies, God forbid, and we don't agree with my brothers, I will have to share in my father's estate equally because I'm an equal child.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But in sometimes families agree and they say, because you women, you're married, I mean, let us enjoy this thing. The law provides that female and male are equal children and they should share in their parents' estate equally.
Oh, okay. And
by the way, most grants.
Yeah. Keep going.
Most grants are being revoked because the female children were left out during the succession processes.
So it's a big issue. It's a big issue.
It's a big issue. Don't leave your sisters out. Put them in the letter of the chief. If they don't want the property, they will leave them to you. But they're entitled.
What about cases where you have some of the children walienda ngambo and they're not planning to come back, and you're thinking, this land my dad left or this property my dad left ni kidogo, and those ones who are out there, they're living a good life, they don't really need this. Can they come back and contest?
If they come and they find that you already have a grant, they can revoke it. Wow. You must involve them. And if you don't get them, you swear an affidavit to that effect. Because there are cases where maybe one of your siblings went out of the country and disappeared there. You have never heard of them for the last 10 years.
Yes.
In that case, the law provides that if you don't see someone or you don't know the whereabouts of someone for a continuous period of 7 years, they are considered, you can make an application to court so that they can be presumed dead.
Wow.
However, that is worst comes to worst. But you can always make an affidavit to that effect, but don't leave them out.
I'm asking that because sometimes I've seen situations where you feel like ule ameendelea sana. So they should not get anything. I mean, they're living an okay life. They have bought their own lands. They have property. And the rest of us here, we are wallowing in poverty. So really, they don't need it. We need it more than them. And you find that you exclude those ones who are far away because they don't know what's happening. So what you're telling me is that is a dangerous thing to do. They can contest.
Very dangerous. That is the decision for them to make that I don't want.
Okay.
And for them to do that, they swear an affidavit to that.
Or see your word of mouth?
No, see word of mouth.
This is very interesting. Before we run out of time, talk to us about a trust. I keep hearing, you put something in a trust. What is that all about, and when does that apply?
Someone who's registering a trust is someone who wants to have some form of control.
Okay.
Because, if you're a trustee, that thing is not yours. You are holding it for the benefit of other people. And this mostly applies in polygamous homes, where you want everyone to enjoy. So you register a trust and you appoint a trustee. This trustee can never sell this thing without the consent of all the other members. Yeah, so one of the advantages about a trust is that it has to be registered.
Okay.
Before it is registered, it is not binding. Yeah, and once it is registered, you cannot dispose of anything without the consent of other beneficiaries of the trust.
Okay.
And it is long-lasting.
That's good. So would that be a good option to think about if you have children who are not of age, and you're putting together a will and you're including them in the will? So would the direction of a trust be the right thing to do? Because they can't make decisions if anything should happen to you.
Yes, where they're minors, whether you leave a will or not, the properties are always held in trust for them.
Okay.
Yeah, so even if you don't leave a will and we go through the normal succession process and we prove that there are minors there, those properties are held in trust for the minors until they reach 18 years.
Then after 18 years, they can make their own decision.
Yes, any property that is sold when anything is held in trust, can be revoked and the title deeds can be cancelled.
Oh, okay. It's that serious. Okay, I have another question for you before we run out of time. I'm just wondering, is there a similarity between a will and a prenup agreement?
A will is you managing your affairs in your grave, yeah? And a prenup agreement is our agreement. I mean, we want to manage our affairs when you're still alive, but we don't need the normal stress of marriage.
Okay, okay. That makes sense.
It's us having a child, us managing our marriage the way we want without the strict African rules, you know.
Who keeps the will? I've written a will. Who will keep it? Because I need it to be accessed by those who will need it if anything should happen to me. So, nitaiweka wapi?
It is advisable that you write your wills through an advocate, so that when you die, I mean, he becomes the custodian of it. When you die, he or she can easily pull it. I mean,
okay.
Yeah.
Terry Ngire, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Kisumu. We appreciate your wise counsel and your wisdom this morning. Ubarikiwe sana. If you haven't thought of writing a will, begin to think about it, begin to get that process in motion. It is to safeguard your family in case anything ever happens to you. Coming up in the next short while, the next part of Lifestyle Friday, we are getting into food for thought with Professor Ndete. Over the last couple of weeks, we have been looking into the whole aspect of depression, anxiety attacks, and we have not really finished. So we have another segment we want to look into as we continue to talk about depression. So look out. Right now we are getting into Food for Thought with Professor Ndete.
Food for Thought with Professor David Ndete.
Now it is said that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Meaning your mind is the most powerful thing to determine the quality of your life. Welcome to Food for Thought with Professor Ndete. Professor, talking about the stick that I have in my hand. For somebody probably who's never experienced a panic attack and they experience a panic attack, what should they do? Because this is something new, this is something foreign. You know, you're thinking, am I dying? What is happening to me? How are they supposed to react or respond to this attack?
Yes, I was using the example of the stick that I have in mind to emphasize this point that we are short of resources.
Yes.
So we as country, as societies, must learn to harness the resources that we have so that we can use them to bring the resource, to do something for these people. And the resources that we have families. The family is very important. In fact, there's a very big movement that's going on now, and this movement actually started in the United States by a guy called Mesenak, a good friend of mine. He's a world authority on this. And they are saying, for us to be effective, we must start with person-centered treatment. Person-centered treatment is a movement that is coming up in the United States.
Yes.
And is going global. We must start with family-centered treatment. What we are saying is, get people to understand what they are going through. Get myself, let me give my example. Get myself to understand what I'm going through and what I can do for myself in terms of managing the condition. Get my family to understand what I'm going through. Get my wife, get my children to understand what I'm going through. And once you start operating at that level, then you can do quite a lot. That's why I think, and I'm happy to be part of this process, because I am talking to families. I am talking to the individuals. I am not talking to doctors. I am not talking to nurses. Please, when you go to see the doctor and there is a problem, it is your right to ask, explain to me in simple language what is going on in me, what is going on in my child, because I would like to understand, and I would like to know how, as a parent, how, as a relative, can help. So I think to answer your question is knowledge. Give knowledge to people. Let people understand what's going through there.
Okay. Finally, Professor, what are some tips you can give us to help manage panic attacks?
To manage?
To manage it, yes.
Well, very good question. One of the things of managing, once you explain to them what is going on, is there are very simple techniques. There are techniques like relaxation. You can tell people how to relax, and you can tell them in terms of how they breathe in and out, how they can relax their minds. Relaxation techniques, there's very, very many of them. Relaxation, it means you are bringing that level of anxiety from that level to a much lower level. That one can be done. And many people in family situation, a patient can be taught to do that. The relatives can be taught how to make that person relax. And then there will come a time when these attacks are so huge in terms of their severity that you may need to use some drugs, and there are drugs that are available. And what those drugs do, there are two categories. There's one we call anxiolytics, without being technical. Basically, they go to the brain and act on that part of the brain that causes the anxiety, to reduce the amount of anxiety that is occurring at the level of the brain. But then, as I say, when people have these conditions, there are chemical changes that get out of their system, and they go to the level of the heart, they go to the level of the lungs, and they start breathing very fast, or the heart becomes fast, start beating fast, or they may have muscular pains. Then you can give a drug that you can give so that they stop those effects that are outside the brain, at the level of the heart, at the level of the blood vessels. Those medicines are available.
Okay. Finally, Professor, does panic attack have to do anything with personality types? Are there personalities that are more prone to a panic attack than others?
Well, let me answer this question rather indirectly. There are very many medical conditions. We know, for example, diabetes tends to run in families.
Yes.
Hypertension tends to run in families. Many different kinds of oncological conditions tend to run through families, very many conditions. This is expected, given that even in these conditions, there are some chemical changes in the brain, and those chemical changes in the brain are mediated through genetic predisposition.
Okay.
So the same principle applies in any medical condition. It could be a panic attack, it could be anxiety, it could be depression, it could be any condition. So the message here is this: don't treat people with mental illness in a way that is different from other conditions, because the genetic predisposition is all over, even our personalities. The way, if you have a pleasant personality, 75% of that pleasant personality is determined by your genes. If you are an intelligent person and your IQ is very good, for heaven's sake, don't go boasting that I'm an intelligent person. You had nothing to do with it.
Yes.
You inherited it. Okay? It's only about 15% of this may be environmentally determined. So once we understand some of these things, then we take away the element of arrogance or pride. I am like this because I'm special. You are not special. Whatever you have, it was given to you. So that's the point that I am trying to make. And coming back to your question is, yes, it's an element of that, but it's general. But let's not just pick mental illness and say, you are like this because so-and-so in your family, you are like this. Then you start stigmatizing them.
Very true.
Are we going to stigmatize people with depression? Within diabetes? Are we going to stigmatize people with hypertension? Are we going to stigmatize people with all medical conditions for which there is a very strong genetic predisposition? It's just an element of stigmatization. So let's say again, based on ignorance, because people don't know. And the fact that we are talking the way we are talking here, I hear many people will not say it's because of your background. Yes, there is an element of that, but it's all over. It's in all medical conditions, including our personality, including our intelligence, so on and so on.
Wow. Professor, thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate it. Remember, as I said at the beginning, that the quality of your mind determines the quality of your life. Let's maintain a good mental health. That's food for thought for today.
For this and more of our shows, log on to www.familymediaonline.com to enjoy a wide variety of programs, from current affairs to testimonials and features, pastoral and inspirational shows, kids entertainment, and so much more. Also stream live on www.familymedia.tv.